Okay. Good morning, everybody. We're letting people in. It is a beautiful day for football in Tennessee. Obviously, I think we came to Georgia, but it's raining outside, but it's very nice. It's a nice, comfortable 70 degrees. So I hope everybody is going to enjoy the morning and then sit back and watch good football this afternoon. Our guest today is Judge Melissa Blackburn. She is the General Sessions Court Division II judge. Welcome, Judge Blackburn. How are you this morning?
I'm enjoying watching the rain. Good morning.
Well, as most of my guests know, the first couple minutes as we're letting people in is usually to ask some type of irrelevant question. But obviously today's relevant question is, do you always wear those glasses that are orange?
Only when I have on my orange suit. Normally red, but I was not putting anything red on today, Vice Mayor.
Well, wait a minute, I'm wearing red. Sorry.
I mean, no, that's burgundy.
This is burgundy, so I think I can get away with it. So give me a prediction on the game. I assume the judges are allowed to do that with no money involved. Just what do you think is going to happen?
I don't even know what the line is on the game. I haven't been listening to that, but I'm going to say 24-18 Tennessee.
Oh, it's going to be a low scoring game.
I think it is.
I think it's, and you're probably right, because most people go, okay, this is going to be a high scoring game. And then it turns into something like a defensive struggle that nobody ever thought of. But anyway, I assume everybody in this state, in the state of Georgia, is going to be watching this game today at 2:30, right?
Well, considering CNN has already been on the game this morning, I think probably half the country's going to watch it.
Okay, well, I just didn't want to go outside of those two states at this point. But anyway, let me ask you this. There's a beautiful piece right behind your head that's not orange. It is, what is that? It looks very lovely. It's a very nice piece of furniture.
It's an armoire.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was going to be. Is there a history to it, or is it just an armoire?
It is a piece of furniture my husband bought before I met him 23 years ago.
Okay.
And it contains clothing.
Oh, okay. All right. So, okay. Well, that helps answer that question. All right. Anything else that you do? Let me ask you one other question before we get started. Anything else you do on game day to get ready?
Well, he has a list of groceries he's going to pick up on his way home, because we usually try to eat something emblematic of the other team.
Okay, so I'm thinking through that. So you usually try to eat something that's so bulldogs.
Hot dogs.
So you would eat a hot dog. Okay, and so what you're doing is you're chomping down on the other team.
Correct. Okay. Florida Gators, we eat gator chili.
Got it. Okay. So so you're going to be eating hot dogs today?
We will have hot dogs for lunch. All
right. Sounds like a plan. All right. Well, our guest today is Judge Melissa Blackburn. She is Division II General Sessions Court judge. Again, it is a rainy day in Nashville. I don't know what the weather's like in Athens, but anyway, we're glad everybody's here and joining us today. So, Judge Blackburn, my first question to all my guests is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What have you been doing all these years? And how did you get to be a General Sessions Court judge?
Well, I'm a native Nashvilleian. I have an education degree before I went to law school. I was just reelected to my second 8-year term. And I decided in 2012 that I wanted to run for judge. And when I heard that Judge Eisenstein was not running again, I sat down with him and confirmed that. And he was then the mental health court judge, and made a decision that I wanted to be, that was the judgeship that I wanted to run for. At that point in time, I had a child that had died as a result of a mental health illness. She was on a medication that had a side effect of a possible seizure, and she had a seizure on that medication and died. And I felt like my talents could best be used serving the mental health community and trying to make a difference in the lives of those that had a mental health need. And that was the reason I chose to run to be the mental health court judge. And that's the reason I've served that community for the last 8+ years.
How long did you practice law? Tell me about, you got an education degree first,
Correct.
and then did you do anything with this, or did you immediately go to law school?
I taught school for 2 years and decided the kids were great, the parents were crazy.
Okay.
And decided that was really not what I wanted to do. And from there, I had worked in retail all the way through high school and college, actually at McClure's.
Mhm.
And that's where I started when I was 16 years old, and worked there even after college. And my ex-husband went to medical school in Memphis, and I worked as an assistant manager at TJ Maxx in Memphis. But then he came back to Nashville. He went to med school in Memphis. We came back to Nashville for residency. And at that point, I had a small child and another child on the way, but decided I wanted to go to law school. And so I started law school, the least likely student to graduate. I had an 18-month-old child and was 9 months pregnant with a second child. So I had my second child the first month of law school.
The first month of law school, you had your second child?
Yes. And
Did
he was a third year. He was a third year resident. I'm sorry, he was a first year resident at Vanderbilt at that
Okay.
time.
So I just remember my first year of law school, all the hours spent reading and all those things and having to be called on. Did they give you a break because you were 9 months pregnant, or did they
No.
not break?
I did not get a break. In fact, Judge Shriver was my criminal law professor at that point, and he graded me down because I missed one night of class. I even called to ask why I got the grade I got, because that wasn't the grade I got on my tests. And I was told that I got graded down because I missed one night of class. And I explained the night I missed of class was when I gave birth to my daughter that Thursday. And they explained that's the reason I got the grade I got.
You know what? Judge Shriver was what, one toughy?
No kidding. Sorry, I couldn't make the 6 o'clock class.
Have you
I
ever,
gave birth
does
at
he know
noon.
that story? Has he ever heard that story?
I don't know if he ever heard that story, but it just blew me away.
All right. Well, so that story needs to be told many, many times. Okay. So, how interesting. How interesting. All right. So, you have become a judge, and you've got both the mental health court and you've got veterans court.
Correct.
Tell us, we understand why you ran you knew you were going to become the mental health court judge.
Right.
Veterans court, let's start with mental health, and then we'll go to veterans court. So tell everybody about the mental health court. What does it do? How do people find their way into your court? And what are the, what are the potential remedies in that court for individuals that have found their way into that court?
Well, they're very similar for both the mental health and veterans court. You find your way into either court because either your attorney, the judge, the DA, or possibly even your probation officer feel like you need the extra assistance that the mental health or veterans court can provide. You've obviously picked up criminal charges and you need assistance. Veterans court, you're a veteran and you need that extra assistance. Mental health court, you either had your first psychotic break or you have a history of mental health illness. Either as you've been growing up, you have a history, or you're currently receiving mental health services, or due to the nature of the crime you committed, they feel like there's a need for you to receive additional services, or you've been unsuccessful in probation and you need those additional services. What both mental health court and veterans court do are provide basically a blanket around you and provide connections to additional mental health services, services in the neighborhood, in the community, connect you to mental health co-op, connect you to Centerstone, connect you to Operation Stand Down, get you transitional housing if you need to be in inpatient treatment, anything that you need. Those client specialists, which you're assigned when you are accepted into mental health or veterans court, Those client specialists wrap all those surrounding services around you and make certain that you make those appointments, that you're seen once a week by those individuals, that you come to court once a week initially, which then becomes once a month as you're more and more successful, and get you into all of those additional care pieces that you possibly need, with the goal being to get you out of the criminal justice system. We want to help you not commit another crime. We want to get you off of the drugs and or alcohol that you're currently using to self-medicate, and do whatever is necessary to get you back on your road with your life so that you're connected back to your family. If you're a mother that's lost your children because of your use of drugs and alcohol or of your criminal history, all of those things, that's the purpose of these courts. These courts are restoring you back to the person you should be and getting you back on with your life. That's the whole purpose of these courts. These courts aren't as an additional punishment. They're an additional service provided by Davidson County to assist you with your life.
So go back, I guess, go back to the start of the process.
Okay.
And how do so people find their way, based upon either the initial review or whatever, an individual finds their way into your court. I think what's interesting is that at that point you designate a case manager or a caseworker to start working with the individual. How do you initially figure out kind of what the needs are? And then how do you put that into some semblance of, I don't know if it would be an order or whatever that says, this is kind of how we're going to proceed. How does that initial part work?
There is an assessment tool that the state has that is done on each of these individuals once there is an order referring them to someone on my staff to come do a referral and do an interview with that individual, which takes them through that state assessment. At the conclusion of that assessment, they either say, yes, they're willing to have their case brought over to mental health or veterans court, or no, they're not. It's a voluntary process. If they're willing, their case can either come over open, where it's not adjudicated, they haven't entered a plea, or no, they're not willing. If they're willing to bring it over open, that's the best thing humanly possible because they haven't entered a plea. If they're not willing to bring it over, then they go on about their business and go through the criminal justice system as they would anyway. If they're willing and their case can come over open, we bring it over open. If it's a DUI, possibly it can come over open, or it may not be able to. It all depends on the individual charges. If it's something where they need to enter a plea and go ahead and plead to 11 months, 29 days, they go ahead and enter that plea. Also, cases can come from the criminal courts, and they do come from criminal court judges, referrals to mental health court or to veterans court. And at that point in time, once that case has been accepted, then they're assigned a client specialist in either mental health or veterans court. That client specialist then sits down with the team, which meets every week, and they come up with a plan as to how best to serve that individual based on what their charges are and where they are in the criminal justice system. Do they have prior charges? What were those charges? What is their sentence? And have they been seen by either the co-op previously? Have they been to Buffalo Valley for inpatient treatment previously? Do they need inpatient treatment? Do they need transitional housing, which would be another word for a halfway house? What exactly does that individual need? And they come up with a treatment plan. And everyone agrees on that treatment plan. The individual signs off on it, agrees to be in the court, agrees to stay drug and alcohol free while they're in the court, and they start that process. 99% of the individuals, when they start this process, are in jail. And before they can leave jail, they have to be assessed and they have to be stable. which means they have to be on a medication where we know that they're stable and can be released out into the community.
And how do you know? I mean, obviously the medication, I get that, but who makes the determination that they are stable and that they can be released?
The doctors in the jail tell us that they've taken their medication for approximately 2 weeks and that they can either be released to a halfway house or that they can go from there to Buffalo Valley for inpatient treatment.
Mhm.
And we know based on how long they've been taking their medication and what medication it is, whether it's safe to release them.
Okay.
And we have their agreement that they're going to be transported to, say, Park Center or another halfway house, and that they're going to stay there. They don't always do that, but they agree initially to go to that halfway house and stay there. And based on their agreement, then we release them and transport them and start that treatment process.
Okay, so one of the questions that would probably immediately come up is in terms of trying to make sure that people comply. Obviously, it's a good start in the sense that doctors are checking and that determination is being made. But obviously, it's difficult. It is extremely difficult. I get that. And people are going to make a mistake, or they're not going to necessarily comply with everything. How do you deal with that? I mean, and how is that caught? And then do you have to bring the individual back into the courtroom? What tools are you using to try to make sure that these things are followed? And if they're not, what steps do you take at that point?
Well, initially, they're seen by their client specialist weekly, and they're seen by the court weekly. So they see both of us initially weekly while they're in phase 1. They're also being seen by the mental health co-op or Centerstone immediately, so that they know that they've got their medication. Their medication is being supplied by whatever transitional housing unit they're living in. So that medication is being given to them by that transitional housing unit. So they're not responsible for keeping up with their medication. Somebody else has got it and is handing it out. There is a curfew. So they're knowing when they're coming and going. The housing unit knows what appointments they have, whether they're going to Park Center, whether they're going to another IOP or some other location around town for supported services, and when they need to be in court, when they need to be in their client specialist's office, things like that. They're also, if it's a mental health court individual, they don't have a source of income. So we're also looking for SSI and trying to get that turned on so they have a source of income to pay for their housing. In the meantime, the court or a spot order is paying for their housing until we can get that turned on.
Okay.
Other around supported services are all being put in place when they're released from jail so that they have all their needs met. A bus pass is being supplied by the court so that they can get to and from, because they don't have transportation, obviously. Whatever needs to be done, if there's a stay away order, which frequently there is, because there was violence involved, possibly with a family member or a spouse, those things are put in place and explained. Anything and everything that needs to be put in place is put in place before they leave the jail, and then reiterated immediately when they meet with their client specialist in that office the first time, and again when they come back to court that first time.
Okay, so they are coming back, and you're seeing them on a
weekly.
And obviously some folks are complying, some folks are probably wavering, or you're hoping that they're not. But are there tools that you use, which is tricky, but are there tools that you use as the judge when you've got somebody in front of you to try to make sure people do understand the significance of what they're going through, so
Absolutely.
that they do, there is, I understand the incentives, you've got the wraparound services being provided to, with services, you've got lots of resources being offered, community resources, bus passes, trying to assist in terms of SSI and housing. But even with all that, I know that some people aren't just going to struggle. How do you, as a judge, particularly with your background, try to convince people that they can make it? How do you do that?
Well, you explain to them that it's not going to be easy, but they have all these supports around them. They have their client specialist, they have their client specialist phone number, and they can call them at any point in time. They have their housing, which is a supported housing unit. And if for some reason they don't show back up for curfew, we're going to issue a probation violation, and we're going to go find them, and we're going to pick them back up, and they're going to end up back in jail. And if they can go back to that housing unit, they will. But if they can't, they're going to sit in jail until we find another one. And we'll give it another go. And we'll give it another go. And we'll try as many times as we can until we run out of housing options. And sooner or later, we will run out of housing options. And if they have a drug and alcohol issue, if we're able to get them out to DC4, which I have 7 beds at DC4, that is my final option. That's my last go. That's
and DC4, explain to people what that is.
DC4 is the drug. It used to be Judge Norman's. It's now Judge Smith's criminal court drug and alcohol rehab place. People would go out there for 18 months. It would be their final option to be able to get out of jail and get on with their life. And it is a long-term drug and alcohol treatment facility. Okay. It's not 30 days. It's 18 months, 2 years. It's whatever it takes. For my folks, it's generally 10 to 12 months. They're not on an 18-month program. It's 10 to 12 months. They work their plan. Depends on how long it takes them to work through their steps. And at the end, the last month to 6 weeks, they're actually leaving the facility during the day, going to work at a job, coming back and sleeping there at night. So they're transitioning out. And from there, they do go to a halfway house. So everything is put in place to help them. When they failed at every other attempt, this is our last ditch plan, but they're given all the tools they need to get through it, have the supports in place so that they can finally be clean and sober and get on with their life. And we've had mothers that have lost their children, that this is their last step, but they're able to get their babies back because they successfully complete DC4. So
I'm going to ask you a question that goes all the way back to the beginning, and then one that goes all the way to the end. For the beginning question is, when that initial decision and assessment is made, it sounds like individuals have a choice. They can either come to your court, and I think you said the word is open, or they're not willing or whatever. So they're choosing to come into your program, to come into the program, correct?
Okay. It's voluntary.
So the question is, how do the case managers or the people who are doing the assessments, how do they convince people that this is the right way to go? I mean, it's one thing to say, this is a chance, and you're not going to end up in criminal court, but this is a chance to get help
or dead.
Yeah. So you would think that most people would, well, I mean, this is me talking. Mm-hmm. You would go like, the obvious choice is I need help and I'm going to go to court. But some people don't make that decision.
No, they don't. Some people stop. Yeah. They've been in our program 6 months and they just decide, I need the drugs too bad. Put my sentence into effect. I'm done. I can't do this. Okay, fine. I'll put your sentence into effect. You go stare at the walls for however long you need to. And some people will ask, okay, I want another try. I've stared at the walls. I've done healing journeys in jail. Please let me out. Please let me have another shot at mental health court. And sometimes they come back. You just never know what's going to be the point where somebody says, I can keep doing it. I can't put my sentence into effect. Lock me up. Or I've had a pregnant woman who's using cocaine, and I finally had to say to her, I'm sick and tired of you using. You're not listening to me. This baby is not going to be born addicted. I'm putting you in jail. I'm putting your sentence into effect. You're 6 months pregnant. You're going to serve your sentence. This baby is not going to be born addicted. And she's screaming and calling me everything known to man. And I'm locking her up, and she's not coming out till that baby's born.
Okay. I mean, this is a very interesting conversation because I know this is very, very difficult. And I know I just can imagine and working around the parameters, how challenging this can be. So go back again to that initial thing. The people who are doing the assessing, what are they using to try to convince people that this is the right thing? I know it may take several different tries through the process, but you would think that particularly, a first-time offender coming through, how do you convince people that going the other way is not the right course? Trying to work your way through criminal court is probably not going to end sometimes that well. That you can do this, that an individual experiencing this can take this path through the mental health court and they can be successful. What tools are people using to try to convince people to take this route?
We've had people come through 2 and 3 times, Vice Mayor. They are telling them that this is the only way you're going to live. If you keep doing what you do, you're going to be dead. This is your only chance. Your entire family is addicted to drugs. They all use. And we had one young girl that Trish begged, her attorney begged, this is your only way that you're going to ever have a life. She ultimately went through DC-4 and came out clean and came out with a life. Her entire family deals drugs. Her mother sent her drugs, I think, in jail at one point. That's how bad the family was and how addicted the family was. But we got her clean. Trish begged her, begged and begged and begged, and finally convinced her to go to DC-4. And she graduated from DC-4. When you graduate, all your fines and fees are waived from every charge you've ever accumulated. I don't care if it's $10,000. They're all gone. You don't have to pay a dime, ever. Every case that we can expunge that you've ever gotten is going to be expunged. So that is not going to keep you from getting an apartment or getting a job later in life. All of that's wiped off. You've got a fresh slate. It is a clean slate. All of what you've done wrong is gone.
Okay. What is, okay, here's the question on the back end. Success rate. And I know that you may have to measure it in different ways, like first time, second time, people going through it a third time. Ultimately, success. You're doing the best you can in a very difficult situation. How is it working?
The average recidivism rate is a 50% in the general population. Ours is 88%.
That's
so
amazing.
88% of our people do not reoffend. And
That's
here's
amazing.
another number you need to know. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is me telling you as the vice mayor. A jail night for Sheriff Hall, anyone with mental health needs, which means one of my veterans or one of my mental health folks. And we go to 2019 because that was the last year we could use a statistic. We saved the city with those folks over $10 million in jail nights. $10 million. Do you know what we asked for our mental health court to sustain?
I'm scared to ask. How much did you ask for?
$50,000. And we got pushback when we saved the city $10 million. We got pushback on $50,000. That was to pay for bus passes, and that was to pay for nights until we could get SSI turned on for these folks to pay for them to be in halfway houses. We saved 10 million. We got pushback asking for 50,000. Sounds like we were a bargain. I don't know. What do you think?
I have no comment. No, I mean, I think part of this and part of the reason, obviously, these programs started during the pandemic as a way to kind of inform people as to things that they didn't know about. And there has been a tremendous amount of information that flowed through these things. Not from me, it's just from talking to individuals like yourself, Your Honor. It's getting this information out and understanding that these programs are out there and the good that they're doing. And one of the things that we have to do is get information about your programs in front of the proper people and then explain and push as to what they're doing. Because an 88% success rate is phenomenal.
It is.
Because you're you're saving lives and you're saving families.
Generations.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
if we put one family back together, a mother and her 4 children, and that particular mother tried to OD in our court, she swallowed a bottle of pills in front of those babies. She had 4 children, but we got her clean and sober, got her back with her babies after DCS took those babies. We saved 4 children for generations and put that family back together. That is what these programs do.
Okay. I think that's what this is all about.
Mhm.
All right. Let me switch for a minute to, and I've got Councilmember John Rutherford on the call, and I know he's interested in this. Veterans Court.
Yes.
How does that work? I know you said it's similar to mental health court, but start again with Veterans Court. How does that work, and how do people find their way into your courtroom? How does that work?
It's the exact same process, the same assessment tool, exactly. The same, we have one individual that is the client specialist for all of Veterans Court, Llewellyn Pickard. She is the sole individual that is the client specialist for Veterans Court. And Veterans Court is a separate court from mental health court. It's held every Monday at 1 o'clock. And there are separate providers for Veterans Court. We deal with Operation Stand Down. We deal with Matthew 25. We deal with the VA, and we have 2 people from the VA that are present at every court. We also have mentors that are at every court, that we pair a mentor with every veteran that comes through Veterans Court. So there's one-on-one mentoring that's going on with those veterans. So there is a lot of things. Centerstone works with our veterans as well. So there are a lot of wraparound services that we're able to provide to veterans that we don't necessarily have for mental health individuals. Veterans also come to Veterans Court with normally an income already because they have retired from the service. So they've got some source of income. 99% of them do. Now, we take veterans that are dishonorably discharged or those that never completed their service. We take veterans that are coming out of the Guard that may not have ever gone into active duty. So we take a wider swath than just the honorably discharged veteran.
And are the veterans that are coming into your court, are they coming in because they have some type of mental health or substance abuse issue, or do you take other cases as well?
We take a veteran that's committed a crime. It does not matter what his issue is. Her issue. We have male and female veterans. We've had them as old as in their 80s and as young as in their early 20s.
And okay, so you've talked about mental health court and you've got veterans coming in. So my guess would be that they're going to go through some of that same type of process in terms of getting that type of substance abuse or mental health assistance if they're coming through on that way. Is that right?
They have different services available to them, the VA, that we're able to use. But then we also use some of the same facilities. Also, we use Buffalo Valley, some of the same facilities that we use for mental health individuals. But they also have other services that are available through the VA if we can get them into those services.
All right. So mentoring process or bringing mentors to help people, sounds like you do it maybe in different ways. But for veterans, do they get do they get mentors if they need it? And who are those individuals?
They are automatically assigned a mentor. And the
Okay.
mentors are individuals that are trained by, there is a program that the court goes through. It is a training that we go to every year all across the country. Mental health courts, veterans courts, and drug courts. And there is a mentor training program that occurs during this conference every year. So anyone that is a mentor across the country has a track at this conference where they're trained. So anyone that's a mentor through our court has gone through that training.
Okay. So they don't necessarily, the mentors don't have to necessarily be veterans. They just are specially trained people.
Well, they are veterans.
They are veterans. They're all, okay. Okay. I missed that. Okay. So they're all veterans that are being trained. Okay. Tell me, so veterans that don't necessarily have a mental health issue, but are headed in your direction, how does that work? How do they get, what type of services may be available or treatments are available for an individual that may be a veteran that has committed a crime, but doesn't appear after assessment or whatever to have any type of mental health issue? How does that work?
Well, if it's an individual that's committed, I'm trying to think of what crime it would be where they wouldn't need additional services, because if they've committed some type of assault, they're going to need some type of, there probably was a substance involved if they committed an assault.
Yeah.
If they committed a DUI, obviously it was either drugs or alcohol that was involved that caused that DUI. What kind of crime are you thinking?
Well, I guess if they, I mean, I know that a lot of crimes are tied to either a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue. But one of the questions I had asked initially was, do you get all veterans? Do all veterans come your way into Division 2 as they enter the system? And
well, only if they acknowledge that they're a veteran. A lot of them will not acknowledge that they're a veteran because they're afraid they're going to lose their benefits if they admit that they're a veteran, which is the last thing that would happen.
Okay, so if I'm a veteran and I've got a charge of committing a burglary or robbery, but I don't have a history of substance abuse or mental health.
Probably do, and that's the reason you committed that robbery.
I understand. Well, I probably understand. So I guess that's my question is, I show up and I'm going like, Your Honor, I didn't do it. And I don't have a history of mental health or substance abuse. But your court is designed to try to help those individuals. So how do you figure that one out?
Well, we would figure out what the underlying issue was. Yeah. And we would assign a mentor to you. There is a Veterans Court Light, believe it or not, that's a quicker track that you would move through it quicker. It wouldn't take the normal 1129 to go through, and you would be seen less frequently by the court, which we actually have for those individuals.
Okay, so Veterans Court, in terms of let's talk about success rate there. How is that working? It's
right at the 88% also.
Okay. All right. So that also seems to be working. Tell me this, the number of cases that you're getting in these types of courts, because that leads to obviously a bigger issue. But let's start with Veterans Court first. Any idea about how many cases you might see in a given year? And I know the data may be, slower coming in, but you have Veterans Court once a week, is that right? And that's on Monday?
We have it on Monday, and we have it every other Friday for those that have been picked up on a probation violation warrant during that week.
Okay. So how many, on a given Monday, an average case docket, how many cases are on there?
Probably 20 to 25.
Okay. All right. So you're seeing, my math is not good, but if it's about 50 weeks a year, you may be seeing 1,000 people that are coming through. Okay. All right. Now the other question, mental health court. What's your docket like there? How many cases, how often are you having mental health court? And
every Monday. and
Okay.
every other Friday.
Same thing. Okay.
But there's also, we have a new division of mental health court, which the mayor funded on a trial basis. It's the mental health incompetency court.
Okay. And what is that? And how does that work?
It is where Vanderbilt has found someone incompetent, and they then go either to Vanderbilt deems them needing to go to MTMHI for further evaluation, or deems them to be incompetent, never to be deemed competent, or have an intellectual disability, or need further training. They need something else. Vanderbilt has said they're incompetent and they need something else. Those individuals end up on this docket.
Okay.
And they're between October of 19 and June of 21, there were 182 people in Davidson County with this designation.
Okay. So for people listening or watching, because I think we've talked about this before, and this goes back, and I won't be specific or too specific, but every so often you'll read in the paper of somebody that is not, people basically know that they're not competent, but they may be committing a crime, they may be assaulting people, they may be doing something like that. Okay.
I can use his name because his name was on the national news.
Okay. All right. So the individual was around, I think, near the Vanderbilt campus, and was either assaulting people or yelling at people. And I think the story was that he would be picked up and deemed incompetent and then let back out and then do the same thing.
And this was Larry Brown. He attacked the nurses at St. Thomas Hospital when they were coming to work. And his case was nollied. And then he was picked up 2 weeks later again. And his case was nollied.
Okay.
And he has actually been picked up again approximately 4 months ago, committing another violent crime.
Okay. And the problem was he was not competent to stand trial.
Correct.
And so you had to let him out. And so what the issue became was, how do you deal with a case like that? And it sounds like what working with the mayor, and I know you work with the DA, and I think you probably work with the public defender. I don't think anybody wants those individuals out because they're not competent and they're not capable of understanding what they're doing, and they may be harming people. And so now, what is the process to deal with an individual like that?
That is the impetus for this court. That is exactly what happened when Larry Brown occurred. We sat down and over a year's time created this court. And this court is working now. It began in July, and we've seen 30 people since July 1st. And we are working with those individuals either to send them out to MTMHI, which is where Larry Brown is now, on an extended stay. And when they release him, we will follow their instructions as to what to do with him next. And I don't know what that will be. Vanderbilt has said 60 to 70% of the people that they deem incompetent can be found competent subsequently, either because they spend 30 days out at MTMHI, which means they're getting a good diet, they're getting housing, and they're on medication for 30 days, so they become stable, or they receive further training, or there are other things that can occur in their life so that we can reduce the number of those on the street that are incompetent. And then we can provide supported housing for these individuals and medication and other things. So we're trying to work through that process to reduce additional charges that these individuals would pick up, because we assist them in becoming competent so that they do not pick up additional charges, and we provide that housing and other things. So that's what this program is that we've put in place for a year, and we're going to see how it works. And I'm hoping, Vice Mayor, we get it funded for another year so we can continue to work with these individuals and keep them off.
So I first of all, well done in terms of trying to come up with a solution.
Thank
You know, it was a, I think after understanding it all, I think people realized there was a gap, that there was no way to deal with this particular situation. And that what you did was you stayed with it and were persistent and worked with other people and came up with at least a way to try to deal with it. And my guess would also be that because it's new, you're going to be watching it and trying to figure out whether this is going to work. If it doesn't, then you have to tinker with it and try. But the idea is, had a gap and you filled it, which is impressive, and I appreciate that. And it's probably, my guess would be, is it too hard to know now whether the initial steps seem to be working, or are you monitoring it? I mean, has it been in there long enough to go, right now seems to be working?
Well, we don't have enough time yet to know,
Yeah.
because we've just been able to get the first individual on board, hired, that's working for the co-op and is responsible for providing the support services for these individuals. She just really is getting her dug into it, and we've got to hire the second person that was allocated to this. We've got a huge gap right here, right now, and we're working actually with the mayor's office on this, because the health department is losing so many employees. The employees that were supposed to be keeping up with the data on this are all gone. All the health department support we had for this has disappeared. So we're working with the mayor's office to try to get someone possibly internally at the mayor's office to be responsible to work with the health department and getting someone to keep up with the data. What's happened before is Vanderbilt has been keeping up with the data, but then it ends up in-house at Vanderbilt and no one else has access to the data. So the data has got to be held at the health department so we can all use the data going forward. So we've got to figure out that dark hole right now. And we're working with John Button and Christine Wilson to figure out how we can plug that hole, because they're losing people right and left right now at the health department. But we're getting there, and we're figuring out, we're also right now trying to figure out, because Vanderbilt cannot do the training in this program because they're the one assessing if the person is competent again, once they are trained. So they can't train and then determine if the person's competent. So we've got to find a company that, or an entity that will do the subsequent training so Vanderbilt can determine if they return to competency. And we're at that point, we realize we've got to find an entity to do that training. So there's bits and pieces we're still trying to fill of the program.
It's amazing to me, first of all, as I said, you found a program, you stuck with it, got the program started, but now you're dealing with, like all new programs, okay, what are the gaps in the program? And it sounds like trying to make sure that the collection of data is available so that you can see it, so you can figure out if it's working or not. And then you've got, you know, processes that you have to make sure follow proper, I guess, guidelines to make sure that the right people are doing it. I would say hang with it and keep us informed. I think it's really important.
We will, I promise.
I figured you would. I got one. The question that on the docket, on your mental health court docket, on a typical average day, how many cases would you see?
Probably 35 to 40.
Okay. All right. So let me expand the question. We've got about 10 minutes left. You're in a unique position as a judge and watching particularly all these cases go through. And I mean, this is very difficult work. It can be extremely difficult in the courtroom, obviously, at times. And this is probably not a fair question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. From a policy standpoint, and from what you see, okay, so you're dealing with situations that have already happened, and then all of a sudden they're in front of you. What we want to do is deal with the situations so that they never happen. so that they don't occur, so they're not in front of you. So in your unique perspective, do you have any ideas about, as you're talking to somebody who tries to help make policy or is involved in that, how do we better deal with this as a city so that you don't
Working on that.
Huh? You're
I'm
working
working
on. Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about that, or is it all a secret at this point?
It's not secret.
Yeah.
I'm working with a group of individuals that are working on juveniles.
Okay.
Because that's the piece that we need to work on. And they're trying to put in place hospitalization for juveniles that have been arrested that have mental health needs. And
Okay.
there's not a hospital currently that has that capability of a unit to house individuals that need mental health care. And that's one of the pieces they're working on currently. And that's something that needs to happen. And I'm also I'm working with them specifically because they're working on youth. And that's where I see what we need to work on, because we need to be working on that 5th and 6th grader that ends up getting sent home because he or she's misbehaving in school so much. Well, that child doesn't need to be sent home because they're misbehaving. Someone needs to be sending that child to a doctor so they can be evaluated, or the doctor needs to come to school and evaluate that child. That child isn't a bad child. That child needs to have an evaluation and see what's wrong. Is it something because the child isn't getting enough sleep? Is there a mental health issue? Is there a physical health need? We need to figure out what's going on. Because if we can solve the problem with that child in 5th and 6th grade, that child isn't going to become the delinquent that doesn't graduate from high school and ends up selling drugs or ends up shoplifting if it's a girl and pregnant and whatever else. We can stop this pipeline if we stop it there and figure out what's wrong with that child. If we take the time to figure out what's wrong and keep that child in school.
So most of those initial views are probably going to be in the school system, in terms of teachers watching children, that type of thing. So is the school system involved in terms of your initial review and discussion about this?
I met with Dr. Battle before she became the head of the school system, the director, and I got nowhere.
Okay. And why was that?
I don't know, but I was very disappointed because we've got to make the change in the school system, whether it's with the teacher, whether it's the guidance counselor that's in the school system. We've got to provide the schools with the tools so they can do this. If we don't, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And Judge Callaway is going to continue to need a larger jail.
Well, Judge Blackburn, let me go back. So based upon knowing you and knowing that you're tenacious in terms of your efforts to get things done, you're going to go back to the school system, and I'll give you an example of what I've seen, because I agree with you. So last term, as a council member, I went out to now I forget what they're called, but they're the schools when you get suspended from school, like from high school, or expelled from high school, from a particular school. You're not necessarily expelled from the high school. You go to another school. It's kind of an interim where they send all the kids that were expelled. That's where you go and you get some classes and so forth. But eventually you're brought back into the school system. And the program is built around kids that are either a little bit older, like in middle school or junior high or high school. And I was trying to figure out, some of these kids have had problems for a long time. And if they had been picked up early enough, early pre-K, kindergarten, that type of thing, maybe they could have gotten help then where they wouldn't be needing this type of situation. They would not be in this situation now. So the earlier, the better. So I go back to my initial question to you is that I know that sometimes it's probably unfair to say that teachers have to do all this work. They've got enough stuff going on, but they may be the ones that can see this early on and can at least get the kids referred to a place where they can get help. So are you going to keep trying?
I'm not going to give up. That's the
Yeah.
reason I'm sitting on this other committee, is to try to figure out how I can use my voice to help them, because I will go sit in front of the legislature and make sure we get funding for whatever we need funding for. Because I sat in front of them at every hearing they had when the speaker was trying to get mental health courts funded across the state. I was there no matter what committee was hearing the argument. I sat there with Judge Eisenstein to make sure my voice was heard, and I made certain we got that funding across the state, and it passed, and the governor signed the bill. Never before in the state had they funded mental health courts. They're now funded. So I am tenacious and I will not stop. So you can count on it.
Yeah, I figured that I would, and I appreciate you doing that. I guess in the final couple minutes we've got, how do you make this is important information? So how do you get word out that we have this? These courts are going on, and that there are efforts being made. I call it after something has happened that has gotten them into the system. But we know that there are all these problems out there. How do you get the word out that everybody needs to kind of join together and give it and keep pushing in terms of the efforts that you're making to deal with this earlier on, and to get the resources available to actually deal with the situations that you're seeing?
Well, I've spoken at a number of African-American churches,
Mhm.
and I would love to speak to ministers, a group of ministers. I think that's an excellent way to do it, because I think ministers may see some of the things that I'm talking about that teachers also see, because they may see it at home with the children, or hear it from parents. I have spoken to any and every group that's asked me to speak. I speak to as many attorney groups as I possibly can, but anyone and everyone that would like me to talk with them about this, I'm happy to, because even families, you can pick up the phone and call me, and I speak with people that don't have someone in criminal court, but have someone that needs assistance. And I'm happy to assist them in getting their loved one any and all assistance I can get them. Because we've got to take the time when someone needs mental health assistance, whether it's a veteran or just anyone, to get that assistance, get them the help they need, get them the doctor's appointments they need. Because if we don't, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better without taking the time to care for that individual.
Well, I applaud all the work that you're doing. I very much appreciate you taking the time today to be with us. We will get the word out. I know that we'll see you at the council office and the council, because that's who you are. You stay with these things and you work until you get them done. So very much appreciate the time this morning, Judge Melissa Blackburn, Judge Division II in Veterans Court and Mental Health Court. Any last comments from you before we sign off? I will tell the audience next week I will be hiking for Safe Haven. People are welcome to join. That's what I do when I'm not the vice mayor. So I won't be on tomorrow, but we'll be on the next week. It'll be right before Thanksgiving. Usually, Judge, that we have Santa Claus on around the holidays. We've never had a turkey. We'll try to figure out how to do that one, or some cranberry sauce or something. But any last words before we go? I just appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I will say I have hiked for Safe Haven a number of times. Unfortunately, I will not be able to join you next week. I'm going to be at the UT Missouri game.
Well, good luck today, and I keep those glasses ready because you'll be at the game. I understand that. Everybody, thanks for joining in. Enjoy this rainy morning. Go outside if you can. Don't get wet, but enjoy the warm weather, and enjoy watching football today. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, everybody be safe. Thanks, Judge.